I want to introduce Lee and Jeff again. And I did put together, it's a little bit busy, but a slide that Lee's going to talk about the general overview of Denver's heat pump rebates, the program so far, what their plans are for the future, and then we'll open up for questions. We do have the original flyer, so I don't know, Lee, if you have updates and want to send them to us, we can post them in the chat for everyone. If you have new flyers or any requirement sheets or anything like that. And then I did include the Xcel Energy rebates as well for electrification because Denver's program is based on those. And then I did include the heat pump action meeting for the contractors and dealers on July 21st that I mentioned earlier. So welcome, Lee.
Yeah, thank you for that intro. I think that flyer is still pretty accurate. You know, I think the only change that we've really made is that our heat pump program is currently closed, but the rest of the information on there is still accurate. So let me just have a couple of slides to go through it quick, and then I'll give Jeff some time to also talk about his programs. But essentially, I'm just going to give a quick update about how our heat pump rebate program has gone in the 2 months that it was open. We've seen a ton of interest. It's been really great, and we're hoping to keep that going over the next 2 years, well, 2.5 that the program is intended to last, our climate action rebate program. So as you might know, we had different rebate values available for air source heat pumps, cold climate air source heat pumps, mini split heat pumps, cold climate mini splits, and ground source heat pumps. We were trying to kind of cover everything, and we were also providing rebates for heat pump water heaters. So again, as Patricia mentioned, our rebates were based on Xcel. So we matched all of their efficiency requirements for the equipment because we were hoping to make sure that people could get both rebates as part of the program. We're trying to maximize the value to the resident of our rebate. So our program was open from April 22nd to June 24th. So about 2 months before we reached our funding max for this period, and we had to close it there. We are still sort of in the process of finishing up everything. You know, contractors had 14 days after the install to submit paperwork. So we're still getting paperwork from our official end date of June 24th. But this is the information that I have for us so far. This is what we have seen. So we did have our own registration for this program. And the way that that worked is you had to be an Xcel registered contractor, but you also had to register with our program. It was a very simple form. We didn't seem to have too many issues with it with the contractors that we worked with. 72 contractors did register with us. 48 of those contractors actually submitted rebate applications. And overall through the program, you can see the numbers of rebates that we provided here, and all of those rebates totaled almost $2 million in rebate funding. We're definitely expecting to be over 2 million by the time we finish processing all of the last applications that have come in over the last week or so. And through that, we were able to install over $4.5 million worth of total projects just for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. So it was kind of interesting, the numbers that we saw for the different types of heat pumps that were installed. More cold climate mini splits than regular mini splits, but far more regular air source compared to cold climate air source. We're still not sure if that's due to availability of equipment or just total cost of install, that kind of thing. We're guessing that we only saw a few ground source heat pumps because those are more involved projects, but we'd be interested to see if we see more of those in the future. And we also saw a fairly low number of water heaters compared to what we were expecting. And we're thinking that that might be, you know, talking to some contractors, it sounds like that might be due to Xcel's requirements and things like that, since we were matching that. So that is something we're going to think about moving forward. But this is the number of rebates that we have provided in each category so far. And so we have closed our program, but we're hoping to reopen it in the future, but we have some next steps that we're going to work on as part of that. So first, we have to do a lot more internal planning and just data analysis, seeing what everybody was installing, what type of equipment, seeing where all the equipment was installed around Denver, that kind of thing. and looking at Excel's program, looking at our program, figuring out what changes we want to make. We plan to collect stakeholder input. So that's both from manufacturers and also from all the contractors that we worked with. So we're going to be posting some meetings, probably sending out some surveys, that kind of thing, to see what people liked and didn't like about the program, what parts were easy, what parts were difficult, that kind of thing. So after we do all that analysis and get all that input, then we can determine what adjustments, if any, we want to make to our program, figuring out how we can make it better in the next round. And after that is when we'll announce when we'll be restarting our heat pump rebates. So I think you'll have my email in a couple places on these slides and in Patricia's slides, but you can always contact me if you have any questions or any thoughts about our program, if you directly participated. You can also join our mailing list. These links I think will be included in the documents that Patricia sends out. Or you can register yourself as a contractor, have your contractors register with us if they want to get program updates as they become available, because we'll be keeping everybody on our list updated as we move forward. But yeah, just a brief update there. Hopefully that will give you some information. And I think before I answer questions, I can turn it over to Jeff, and then we can do all the questions at the end. If that sounds good.
That sounds great.
All right.
Thanks, Lee. I did not prepare a PowerPoint presentation, kind of thrown in here at the last minute today, but just want to give you all an idea that we're also going to be standing up the commercial and multifamily incentives soon. And as part of that, I would say it's a two-prong approach. We're starting off with a building codes update. And if you've already been paying attention to the municipal code updates that occurred last year, we're going to be moving towards like more parity between gas replacement of equipment and electric, the heat pump technology. So in 2023, basically quick permits go away, and we'll be requiring the city will be requiring, when someone is replacing gas equipment, that they're going to have to choose some options to actually review those systems. One of those is electrification feasibility report. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Right sizing of equipment or gas line leak testing are some options within that. And those requirements are going to ramp up every 2 years. 2023 is the beginning. 2025 and 2027, we start phasing in more requirements for more equipment. And I'll plug that we're going to have a feedback session on these code updates in early August, and I'll be getting Patricia some of that information as soon as I get the announcement out, hopefully tomorrow. And that's really going to go through what are the requirements, what's the permitting process changes, what do you need to know, and for us to hear some feedback from stakeholders like yourselves and building owners and engineers, architects. Many people will be affected by this. The other part that I want to talk about is the commercial and multifamily incentives. And really this is the kind of the other part that Lee was talking about, that they've been primarily working on single family heat pumps. Now we're going to be working on the commercial and multifamily. So think of 5-plex and larger for multifamily and all of the commercial buildings that were not covered in the CARE rebates. These are a little more complex because there's more systems. We're really focusing on the time of replacement based upon the code. And we're really going to start off with these electrification feasibility reports, designing those, piloting those through our pilot projects, providing training sessions for folks on how to fill them out, how to use them, and do more outreach to those affected, both building owners and technicians, energy engineers, all of the above. Then we're starting on our heat pump pilots. So these are really going to be you could think of these as the easy to electrify systems, tank type hot water heaters, rooftop furnaces, and furnaces will be primarily what we're looking at. And from that, we're going to be able to use that information gained over the next 6 months to hopefully design our incentives with data, lessons learned from those pilots, and reaching out to partners like yourselves and find out what worked, what didn't. And that's how we're going to build our incentives for each one of them, to really figure out how much funding is needed, what do we need to overcome certain barriers in the marketplace or barriers for building owners, and how do we actually run those incentives as best we can, because we have limited funding. It's about a $41 million problem per year, and we have way less than that to spend per year. We have less than that in our full budget. So it's something that we certainly want to work with Excel and others to actually design these incentives. So all of this stuff is stuff that you're going to be hearing about, and I'm excited to come back as we start standing these programs up and as we start learning things to come back and learn jointly with folks like yourselves. Lastly, I was excited to see Patricia talk about the green workforce opportunities that are coming, because that's something we're going to be working very closely with others at the city as identifying opportunities for more of those workforce and training opportunities, and we'd love to partner with folks like yourselves on those too. And that is us in a nutshell, and I would love to take questions along with Lee right now.
The question for Lee, or maybe more of an observation. I mean, you noted you were surprised by the small number of the heat pump water heaters. I'm wondering, is the HVAC contractor the right group that you'd be looking at for heat pump water heaters, or would that be through plumbing wholesale or plumbing contractors that way? So it may be that you may want to expand the group that you're looking at, or find out more where heat pump water heaters are actually coming in the distribution channel, to, if you're looking to collect more of those. Just an observation, just with the information that you shared.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we saw definitely a couple plumbers sign up for our program specifically to do water heaters. So I think trying to do more outreach to that group of contractors would probably be useful.
I was going to add to that I know, Scott, we had a good conversation, Scott Sodroth from PRPA, with Helio Homes, and talking about the install of a heat pump water heater. And it sounded like it was a combination of the mechanical contractor side, and then there were certain aspects that required a plumber. I don't know, Scott, if you want to comment on that, if that's appropriate.
No, that's what we were sort of searching for, is to see if they could clarify, because I don't know if it was like at one time when we mentioned ducting on a heat pump water heater, that was a mechanical contractor's world because it was a duct, and then the master plumber is required for the actual plumbing to cut in the water line. So I don't know that we heard a clear answer other than they did. Helios Homes had the master plumber in place, and they were saying that because they have it, they assume that that's what's supposed to happen, and maybe master plumbers just have to be involved. But I assume it'll be different across the state depending on where we're at. But it did sound like that was a sensitive topic as they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and then also a mechanical contractor, as long as they had a plumber on staff or available during the time of install, if something happened, then or when needed assistance with.
You consider with multifamily that a lot of boilers are coming up at end of life, and boiler systems for those multifamily properties, and this is what we're seeing in Boulder County quite a bit, is this opportunity that is getting missed because of the challenges with metering, sufficient electric meter and capacity to handle a switch from gas to electric, but also with HOAs. But there's a big interest in the boiler replacement, and this just seems like a missed opportunity in those kind of complexes, because they have, what I've noticed is some are looking at just the community spaces, but also most are actually looking at the units as well as holistic upgrades.
Yeah, great question. We actually are looking at those, and we plan to pilot the hard to electrify and starting in 2024. I didn't touch on that just for brevity. If I gave you the 16-page scope of work that we're working on, it would be too much for the meeting, but it's definitely, looking at all of the other systems that are out there. We certainly need to start identifying those. And really what's going to be key for those is, as code comes on in 2025, requiring that we do feasibility reports and start having parity between gas and electric systems for those boiler systems also, and starts phasing into 2027 where we're requiring it, we need to pilot and stand up incentives in front of those also to really change the market and understand how do we best implement these code changes. So yeah, it's definitely something we want to get to. They are much more costly. There's probably some of them that are going to be a lot harder to electrify, but we definitely want to start standing up the pilots and running incentive programs, probably starting in 2025 for those incentives for boilers.
Speaking of strategy, question for Lee. The question around the short time frame that and sorry for the background noise, the amount of money that was spent in the short amount of time and how many systems got done. What was the strategy for having such high rebates that had a good chance, good likelihood to run short and fast, I should say?
Yeah, so we kind of considered different rebate levels to begin with, but it really seems like rebates more on the line of XL's, a couple $100 were not very helpful to people. We got a lot of feedback that they would have to be much higher if people were actually going to choose a heat pump over a regular furnace or something else that they could more easily get for cheaper. So that was why we originally started out with these values. We're going to look at the total project costs that we've seen from all these installs that got done and see if that still seems like a reasonable value to include for the rebate. But so far we have, continued to hear from people that it has to be pretty high if they're going to make the choice of a heat pump over something else, because in general, heat pumps seem to be more expensive.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that, the 7,000 to 9,000 range that you're talking about is substantially higher than elsewhere in the country that are seeing success. So there's probably a middle ground between $800 and $8,000. And I know just from 15 years of working with programs like this, contractors need a reliable program footprint, if you will, so that they can build their businesses around it. Sure. So that they can handle flow, they can handle process, they can hire, and not just be going crazy for 2 months and then back to status quo.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And that was something that we worried about, just given our limited funding and the high rebate levels. So it is something we're trying to think about going forward, is how we can make sure contractors have more information and they can better plan for when the rebates will be available, when they won't, so they won't constantly be worried about whether we'll have money in a program or anything like that.
Yeah, and I'd probably add to that, I know that our forecasting group had a deep dive discussion on this, and they talked about, if you look at the cost of a heat pump install and look at the cost of a gas furnace, and they figured about $5,000 was, $5,000 to $6,000. It was the same cost to install the equipment, to sell it, design it, and then install. And then the difference, they're saying, if you did $2,000 to $3,000 more for the heat pump install, so that it would be in parity and be the same cost as the gas install, furnace install, you basically get 4 times the amount of heat pumps installed versus the 9,000. That was one of the suggestions they had.
Yeah, it would be interesting to, if possible, to try to parse the information around how many of these systems were already on track and just took advantage of the money rather than changed behavior.
Right. Yeah, that's also definitely something we'd want to try to figure out, to see how many people would have done it anyway and just paid a little bit more, and how many people only did it because of our rebates.
I foresee a lot of survey work going into this, trying to figure out what was the motivation for a customer, where were they at in the process, and I think that it also is with the installers and the manufacturers and others. Like getting more information is going to be pretty key to our analysis to actually update the program for something that's sustainable over the next 2.5 years.
Was there communication about the process of when the rebates would end for the contractors?
Yeah, so that's also something that we definitely want to improve. Last time we're kind of doing it based on funding amounts, how much we had to spend on this. We're considering going forward, moving to a different model, saying we're going to be open these particular months or something like that, just because having to check on the amount of funding remaining all the time is pretty stressful for contractors. And I know that it's kind of mean to have them try to do that. And if they check, if they don't check beforehand, they schedule a bunch of projects, that kind of thing. It can be hard to say if there's still going to be money remaining in a couple of months when those projects actually get installed. So this round we did it just based on here's our total amount of funding, and we'll let you know when we're getting close to the end of that funding. But we're considering other methods moving forward because I don't think it worked particularly well in this round.
How do they get the details going forward?
So we do have our website, or like public facing website, which is just for general residents and anybody who's interested in the program in general. That has all the contact information, everything like that. I think it's linked on the flyer. Is go to this website, that'll give you more information. We also have our contractor specific website for contractors who want to read through our terms and conditions and register, that kind of thing. And so we have kind of those two separate websites going right now.
Couple of things. One, with the analysis that you do of the rebates that you've already done, are you also going to be looking at what the socioeconomic relationship was of the end uses? Because if you were putting these high rebate dollar amounts in a high income area, where, I mean, they could choose to go ahead and do it anyways, versus maybe lower income or disadvantaged areas where it would really make an advantage. I think maybe understanding that, and even to a point, even with your revised program, maybe that can be one of the criteria, and you potentially could have higher rebates for lower income applications than a higher income application, so that it would have more value to the end user, as one comment. The other thing was thinking about, for a standpoint of identifying how much money, say, are left. South Coast Air Quality Management District had, when they had their clean furnace rebate program, they put a pie chart on their website, and as rebate dollars were used, it would kind of cover some of the pie chart, so you could look to see how much dollars were available left in the program, and that could be a fairly simple thing that could be updated on your website to provide that information to contractors. So just another idea on what some other agencies have done to try to address the same issue that you were just talking about.
Yeah, we did actually do both those things. Those are good suggestions. For the first one, we do have a income qualified program, which does provide higher rebate amounts. It's still currently ongoing. We haven't closed that one because we have sort of a separate funding pool for that one. So this program that I'm talking about in particular is more targeted at just your general Denver resident. And so we're working with the lower income communities through the Energy Resource Center. So they're processing all those applications, and they have their own specific contractors that they work with. So they don't, it wouldn't be open to just any general contractor. So we're going to see how that works for the next couple of months as they start doing those projects. And then we can decide if we want to keep it with ERC, or if we want to include a income qualified portion in our regular program, where an income, like a low income resident, could just pick any contractor from our list, like, our regular program. So yeah, something that we're thinking about, and it's still going on. And we did have not a pie chart, but it was sort of a bar chart showing how much money that we had spent. But I think it was still just difficult for contractors because they were scheduling projects out, a month or 2 months or something like that. So they were worried that even if we have funding now, if we get a whole, influx of projects in the next couple of weeks, we might run out. So I think that was one of the issues that we were dealing with. And it has been interesting to see where the heat pumps are getting installed. So far, we haven't seen them being clustered in, the highest income neighborhoods in Denver. They have seemed pretty spread out. So that's good, but we definitely want to do more analysis there to see where they're getting installed.
Forward. And Lee and Jeff, any other comments? Great to have you here. It's been good to hear everything.
Yes, thank you for your comments and input, and I do think we need to come back to you with more information and more feedback sessions before we relaunch again.
Right, agree with that. And yeah, thanks for inviting us, Patricia. This is really useful and a great group to, I think, talk to moving forward.